is Troy DeVolld. I am a reality television producer. I stumbled into it about 11 years ago when I was out in Los Angeles trying to get into screenwriting. I'm co-executive producer on VH1's Basketball Wives LA, and the just ended Baseball Wives. I think you hit on something that I thought was very interesting that I want to talk about before it falls away from me. When you were talking about how the stories were universal, that I think that's what made shows like Cosby and Fresh Prince and everything else, is it was all family-related comedy. And everybody, I don't care what color you are, can relate to family-related comedy. I think comedy is easy because we are never confronted with anything when we watch comedy unless it's a very special episode of something. Drama, I've always been confused that I've never seen, in my memory, an all-black cast in a drama on a network. I don't know if it's because black viewers are flocking to cable, because cable stations that specialize in black content, if that is such a thing, like you have BET and One and things like that. I think that maybe it's because people are turning to those specific sources and saying, well, this is where I see myself, this is where I identify, as opposed to just, I can laugh at anybody that gets put in front of me. That may be part of the problem, is that people at the network are saying, well, everybody's watching everything on BET. Well, everybody's watching everything on the One. Or even some of the programming on VH1. There's a tremendous amount of content with African Americans on VH1 right now. Well, it's funny that you mentioned media consolidation, because my familiarity with certain producers like Suzanne Passay and Charles Floyd Johnson is another one that I mentioned, who is one of the executive producers on CSI. Not CSI, good heavens, he'd kill me if he heard that, NCIS. What I would tell you is that I think that this media consolidation, when you have media in the hands of fewer and fewer people who are reading the bottom line, they become sort of slavish to demographics. And ultimately, television is a business. It's about finding where your advertising dollars are going to return the most money. I also think that if you don't ever explore outside of that sphere, you'll never know how much money you could make. It's one of those things where I think that with fewer and fewer options, fewer and fewer places for people to sell their shows, it does get harder for something novel or new to get out, or to have a cast that's really genuinely produced. One of the other problems that I think you have is that if you take a look at Suzanne and Charles and I are all part of a thing that's called the Caucus for Producers, Writers, and Directors. It was founded a long time ago when they were in the process of revisiting ownership regulations with networks, as far as networks being able to own their own content, because they were claiming that independent producers were going to get the shaft if networks were not required to carry a certain percentage of stuff from independent producers. Well, independent producers can come up with some pretty wonderful ideas and present them. Right now, most shows originate at the network level and are farmed out to different production companies, if you we have a very heavy layer of creative executives that you have to get through in order to be able to pitch a series. I have a friend of mine who created a series for ABC in 1985 or 6, and he describes the experience as, I was a young guy, I didn't have a lot of experience, I had written for a few sitcoms and some other things. He says, I went in, I pitched the show, they liked the show, the president of the network thought it was funny, and he said that's good enough for me, and that it became a show. They just don't do that anymore. There's such a big dance and so much with focus groups and everything else that just a really original, fresh idea, it's very difficult to get it through. So they're very interested in replicating the successes they already have. So you have The Office, Parks and Recreation, shows like that may have a token character or two of a different ethnicity. And again, you're talking about a sitcom, just like you said, that it only seems to happen with sitcoms. To say, because even with the last writer's strike, which just happened a few years back, one of the big things was the networks were still saying, well, we don't know how to make money off of our shows on the web. Well, they absolutely do. They have Hulu and Hulu Plus and subscription services where you can watch your favorite shows at your convenience. Convenience viewing, I think, is one of the biggest things the web has to offer. I don't know that it's a straight competition yet, and the reason I say that is because network programming has one advantage that the internet does not have. Television programming comes into your house and it's free. If it's network broadcast television, it's free. That excludes a large percentage of the audience that is either rural and doesn't have access to the internet. There are certain financial barriers. I mean, to you or I, it may not seem like a big deal to spend $40 or $50 a month on your internet package, but to a lot of other people, it's not an option. So again, they're watching free television. Network is always going to have that advantage until we figure out a way, for internet access to be free. I don't know how or when that's going to happen, but when it does, I do think that you're going to see people turning to the web in even bigger numbers for their entertainment because they can make their choices. If they don't like something, they don't have to wait 20 minutes for something else to come on. It's the internet is going to revolutionize everything. It just hasn't quite gotten there yet. There's a fellow who's producing for the web. This is very interesting, and I wish I could remember his name. Some of his things he does. If you look up the words "flower gun" on YouTube, you'll find his stuff. He's a special effects designer who does these shorts, and he's been approached by these major studios that want to offer him money to make theatrical stuff, and he says, "No, I want to stay on the web because I'm getting tons of traffic on the web, and people know who I am, and they want to see my stuff." And I can do what I want, and there's nobody over me to tell me what I can't do. Let me tell you this, in defense of the network executives, because it always, it's very easy for us to say that, every time I get notes back, I'm like, why are they doing this? What do they know? There are outside forces that are pushing on them. They have to answer to shareholders and people who don't know how to react to things. I think they would rather see a company that's got a level hold on something than is willing to experiment and do something new. Television in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was new. You could have shows like All in the Family and The Jeffersons and shows that actually dealt with real issues and, could be topical. I don't think people enjoy that as much now. And those shows that are topical are on cable because they're not controlled by the same type of investor. The people who really have a ton of money sunk into these networks, they demand results, and you'll see it in the sort of bland sameness across the board in what's on networks. And I'm taking race completely out of the issue. I'm just telling you that so many sitcoms are completely interchangeable right now. None of them. I mean, there are very few that have anything to really say. They're kind of there. I don't see the same kind of inventiveness.
Right.
That you used to be able to go completely wild, in the earlier days of television. I would say if you were getting 1 million+ views on anything, you are a contender for consideration. That they would consider you to be a success. Like the proving ground just has to be somewhere else. It's why you see so many shows that are adapted from shows that have run overseas. People are taking very few chances on things that haven't been proven elsewhere. So if you can prove yourself on the web, then suddenly you've got a marketable product.